All right, everybody, DJ Lou here, and up next we're going to talk about the contentious topic of streaming, music ownership, and what as a DJ you need to do. Now, there's no doubt about it, streaming services have become the dominant force in the way that consumers, take in their music, be it what Apple's offering now, what Spotify has. Gone are the days, mostly, of people grabbing CDs or digging through vinyl and selecting what they want to hear now. Now, granted, vinyl has had a resurgence as of late, but they represent such a small percentage of all the music that is consumed out there now. But with all that, I've seen the mentality, and I've seen it definitely more with newer DJs, but even a few of the older DJs that taking this streaming idea and applying it for how they cultivate their music as a DJ. Now, there's definitely some benefits. It's there. There's a huge catalog of music available, and you're seeing services like Tidal and SoundCloud that are being made available. But are they quite up to what one would expect? Are they fully legal? Let's dive into this just a little bit. Now, one of the biggest issues to consider in this is the legal aspects of this. Now, as of the time of this video and from times past, there still is not what seems to be a 100% legit public performance use of streaming services. Now, part of the reason is there are different tiers, essentially, in the way copyright is applied to whether it's regular physical media versus a digital media like a MP3 download. Versus a streamed service, and there are specific laws to define kind of each one. Now, there's definitely some nomenclature in the terms of service for each one. You clearly see it on things like Spotify that says implicitly, no public performance. Tidal and others kind of work around a little bit, but this is just a real legal gray area that, to be honest, if there was truly a challenge against that, if say a label started having a beef with SoundCloud or Tidal with the way that they are distributing the music or the way that they're presenting it, most likely the copyright holders would win in a legal argument on that. And that gets kind of to the more larger topic of this all, of having these catalogs that are only available in the cloud and you do not own these songs, even though you might download it locally. If that service disappears, you can no longer authenticate to go play those files. Again, if you have an artist or a copyright holder that has a beef with the distributor and they pull that music can instantaneously be gone from your catalog, or at a minimum not being able to be played back because there's no authorization for that particular file or that artist or however it ends up playing out. So that's something you need to seriously consider, especially for some of the newer DJs who are starting to build up what they have for their music, is if you're relying solely on streaming services, those streaming services could easily disappear. Ask people who are using Pulse Locker just a year and a half, 2 years ago when Serato and that got cut off and bye-bye files. So you might not see that necessarily with Tidal. It is backed by more people, and it seems like SoundCloud has kind of risen up a little bit from the ashes. It looks like they were going to die, and now they're kind of competing again a little bit. But those services, again, could be gone tomorrow, and you do not have access to those files once they're gone, or once there's a legit issue with the artists or copyright holders with those songs. So just be aware that they could easily just disappear. And speaking of artists and catalogs and whatnot, the streaming services catalogs can, while they're enormous, there's no doubt about it, they can definitely be inferior. I'll give my personal taste out there. I'm a big hip hop junkie, also R&B and old school funk and pop. Everything else, but especially hip hop. And when I went to take my own personal CD collection, I was kind of matching it up with what Spotify had. And a good third of what I personally had were either just not in the catalog whatsoever or not playable here in the United States due to licensing issues. So once again, while the catalogs may be fairly massive, they're definitely not all-encompassing. If a third of my collection isn't up there, I'm sure that a third of other people's collections would not be up there as well. So just give that a thought, that if you're relying solely, again, on streaming services, or even half or even less, you might just not have access to the songs that you think you might have access to. So just be aware of that. Another point to consider is, if you do not have those songs locally initially, and you go out to your club gig or your wedding or whatever, and you need to access some songs, and lo and behold, no Wi-Fi, no good cell service, you're stuck in the mud. You have no access to those files. Or if you have to authenticate at that time and you don't have access to the internet, you're kind of stuck in the water until you can. So again, a huge consideration where, personally for me, a good half of my weddings are, up in farms and barns and whatnot, very low or no cell phone reception. Trying to find Wi-Fi can be a very, very interesting challenge. So to be able to just grab a file, out in the cloud and bring it down at a gig, it's not always going to be available. Even if you're in the city and you're doing a club gig, that club might not want to give you their Wi-Fi password. If you're in the basement or something, you're in bad cell phone range, that's it. You don't have access. So again, another thing to consider if you are relying on cloud services. Now, while it might seem that I'm ranting against streaming, that's actually not the case, and I'm not anti-technology. I've been in IT for 23 plus years. I've been DJing for over 30 now. I've done everything from vinyl to CDs to digital downloads. But when it comes down to it, not owning your music typically also means that you really don't know the material that you have, to access and to work with. So, if you're mixing from one song to another and you don't know this, 1990s song that, would be a great transition point to get to this old 70s song, or, that this one song sampled this and you want to use that creatively to get into something else. Not knowing the catalog kind of puts them at a disadvantage of being able to be very creative with their works and all that. So if streaming is kind of in this legal gray area, and you really should, at least in my personal opinion, have this local music in your catalog, especially if you're an up-and-coming DJ, what do you do? Well, first off, definitely subscribe to legit music pools. Now, there's definitely some pools out there that are questionable as hell. You should be able to pick those out. There's definitely some very legitimate, some very high-quality services that are out there. They can charge anywhere between, let's say, I think the lowest one's around $14 a month. Some up to like $40 to $50 a month, but they offer a wide range of genres and just a huge catalog. Now, be aware that pools typically can't offer a lot of older music. You might see some, and if you happen to see one that offers a lot, it's a good chance that they're kind of skirting the law a bit of what's legal in a pool sense. And to think of it from how the pools work and how the labels work, the labels are trying to get exposure for new songs, and some heavy hitters and all that too, but they want those new artists being played and all that. So that's what they end up leveraging pools for, to gain access to the DJ community, and the radio community and others, to be able to get that music out there. So a lot of times finding those older songs can be a really big challenge in pools. So that's when you start have to rely on, some research, everything from the Time Life catalog series to a lot of compilation albums out there. You can actually build a very extensive catalog of really great older material by not spending a ton of money. Going to use CD shops. I'm still a big CD collector, and that's in addition to the DJ pools that I use. I still like my vinyl as well, and a lot of vinyl that you purchase now, you'll get digital downloads. But pools also give you the advantage of making sure that you have clean cuts, so you don't have to worry about making your own edits. But in the end, having that local pool of music, cultivating what songs that you have, it doesn't have to be infinite. You don't have to have 2, 3, 5 terabytes of music on a hard drive. My core library that I typically go to at a wedding is about 10,000 songs. Now, occasionally I will grab my hard drive if I think it's going to be a very just odd night, and I might have to pull some very, real rare ones that I don't keep normally. But you can really do well with 10,000, even far less. And if you're a club DJ and whatnot, a lot of times you're kind of cultivating your set, and this is kind of your thing. And if you're not taking requests and all that, you can pare that down to much, much less. But just be aware that, having that local catalog guarantees you that music, you have access to at all time. And as long as you protect it, you have backups of your music, and you are, properly tagging your stuff, and you know where everything is, this becomes your, this is your tool. Without this, you cannot be a DJ. So take time in cultivating what you have, know the music that you have. If you do subscribe to a streaming service, use it kind of as just a onesie twosie at an event and whatnot if you happen to have access, or if you find that one rare song you just can't find anywhere else, it happens to be, in the streaming service, fine. But if you rely on that as the total means of your catalog, it could ultimately spell disaster for you tomorrow or 2 or 5 years down the road. You just don't know. Well, there's a video, and I hope you liked it. And if so, click that subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, hit that thumbs up, do whatever social media is telling you to do right now. If you like this video and you want to see more like this, go ahead, check out my 4 DJs Only playlist.